So there were a couple of questions on how to actually use the camera again. So I figure I would just make a little demo scene. And like I currently just have a really like normal curve thingy going through it. And I'm starting to set up my camera. So I'm using a second monitor to look at my camera view. I'll bring it into this monitor once we've kind of got it going. Um, but that's generally how I work. I'll have one monitor that just has my view. Usually, when I set up my camera view, by the way, I guess I'll just show this now. I usually have nothing visible except for polygons and whatever particles, whatever it is. Um, if I'm going to use an action safe like this, I don't render with this on. So when I'm going to go and do Play Blast, I turn that off. Okay, 100% turn that off. The other thing I do while I'm working like this is if I go into my camera shape, so my render camera shape, under environment, oh sorry, not environment. Where is it? Display options, sorry. There's a gate mask opacity. You can turn that off, you can turn it on. So I usually turn it completely on and I make it black so that the only thing I see is what the camera is going to render. So that's like my viewport. Like that's what I'm going to see in my render, so that is what I'm going to look at. So you can see that gives me a lot nicer of a framing, and it gives me like better knowledge of like what exactly I'm going to see. Okay, so let me move this off to the side. Keep going. Get off the screen. Okay, so questions are like, well, what am I going to see, or like how do you use this? So I currently have I haven't keyed anything, but I'm starting to place where I want these shots. So I've got this little like firefly trail, and they're going to go around the corner. This is like a weird magic forest thing. So once I've like got my camera kind of placed and where I want it to look, I have my aim control set to world space so that wherever it looks, my camera is always looking at it. And this is where I kind of start to decide my focal length. So like what is my baseline? What do I want it to be seeing? So I can go and pick something reasonable from the get go. So like if I move it really far back, I get a lot more of this, which might be nice for composition. But I've got this really boring ground, so I'm gonna go a little longer on my lens. I'm gonna use like a 50. Maybe I'll use a 60. So I'll just increase that up. Got a little bit of depth of field, a little bit of like some nicer like looks in there. So I'm actually kind of okay with where it's at. I'm gonna turn off my motion blur. And then I'm just gonna kind of place this where I want it to look. So another way I can do this, because you can see that it's kind of not in the best spot. So I'm going to actually go in and I'm just going to like get it closer to the subject that I want it to look at. So I kind of want it to look at some of these fireflies. So I don't actually need the rest of the scene here. So if I go to my outliner, I can just hide that. Makes it a little easier to work with. And I'm just going to snap that onto some of my fireflies, and I can just key that on. So I'm only keying the translates. I'm not keying everything else. So as these guys move along, maybe I want this camera to like, as it moves to not 1,000 frames. Let's make sure we kill that. I'm gonna start from 1001. So I'm gonna key that where it is. And then we're a couple frames in. Let's move this over to something like that. Let's bring the environment back in, and let's just like have a little scrub, see if that. So then I can look either through my lens or I can look at my shot, and I can have this got this pan sort of going on. So that's one move, and that's really easy, but it's like it doesn't make this feel very dynamic. So I'm going to actually go in. I don't need my environment again, so I'm going to hide I'm going to start moving my camera around. So my world control, I don't really want to move. It's more this guy I'm going to move, my main. So I can move this around. And if we look through my camera, um, actually, let me move that back in. Sorry. Um, if I move my main around, you can kind of see it's giving me a little bit more of like, how is this shot going to look? So I'm going to go from a little bit wider on the side view. Let's bring that back in. And I'm going to pull, this is where I'm going to do my main camera move, right? So it's on the main control. That's where my majority of my work is going to be. So I'm going to select that guy real quick. I'm going to set a key. Let's move this out this way. And then as it goes in, so it's going to turn that way. So I want to actually, I've lost my focus, right? I don't have what I'm supposed to look at. So I'm going to actually move. So I'm going to do both a slight truck as well as a pan with this move. So I'm going to move my camera in a little bit more to kind of make sure I'm following those fireflies along. Okay. So as they start to move, there's a little bit of, a focus. So I've got a pretty smooth camera move going on now. One thing I don't like with the basic camera, or how Maya works, is that when you select camera moves, for the most part, they ease in and ease out. So this isn't easing in, this isn't easing out, and it's because they're kind of going to a point. So I need this ease to not do that. So I usually do, you can either move this out so that it goes before, so that these are kind of already in the animation. That way it doesn't feel like the camera is just starting. As well as on top of that, let's go back to my CameraRig. I'm just going to isolate that real quick in this view. Okay, I do have some camera shake, but it's only affecting my translate right now, and I have a little bit of movement, but it's only slightly moving around, and I have the slow as very, very low, like the frequency is not high. So as it moves, it's just interjecting a little bit of extra movement. Um, it's giving me just enough that it's like this feels not totally like three keys, right? It's very, very easy to get me like a much more slower move. Um, I don't like how this final frame looks now, so I'm going to grab that. Where'd you go? I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to move this over here a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to do something like that instead. Oop, should have done it on my last frame. Just so we're kind of keeping our focal point fairly on the same spot. So as they move around, let's go back to the front of frame. Cool. So I've kind of got this like center frame to screen right look. So as it moves, as it moves, as it moves. There's just this like smoother, cleaner camera move that just follows the characters. So we can kind of see where they're going. So that's kind of the story that we're getting in this shot is there are these fireflies, they're flying around, and they're moving in this direction. So it's like, how do we feed into that story? How do we help show that more? Right? So that's the whole move is so that we end up a little bit behind them and we can kind of see that they're trailing off to the side. So maybe once we're at this point, it's like, okay, so there's most of the shot, but I want to do a little bit of a push in as well. So got my Z or my dolly. So I'm actually going to have my dolly start to affect my camera now because now I know that all I want is that push in. So I'm going to go to my starter frame, set a key on my dolly. Come on, let me select it. Takes a sec. I'm gonna move this. Let's make sure that this is set to objects. Reset that guy. Okay, so it looks like I didn't lock any of this stuff on this CameraRig, so let's make sure I lock that. So I'm going to set that to 0. Key that as it goes, and then I'll ease that move in towards the end. So then we can just go in, grab that, just move that in. So we can move that in however much I want to move that in. So I'm going to say, maybe I'll move it in like 200 points. My mind has been pretty slow today. I'm doing a couple other things. Let's do 300. 400? We'll do 300. So we're still kind of getting a little bit of it, but we're not getting the same move now. Yeah, it feels a little bit more awkward. Maybe I'll start 0 here. Yeah. So now we're starting to follow that a little more. Let's make sure that our ease. I am going to break my tangents here. And then I'm going to use weighted tangents so I can move this guy around. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Make sure that this is weighted. And then I'm going to free my tangent length. I'm going to push this out. Just so that ease is a little slower. So that it's not quite as abrupt when it just starts to turn. When it starts to move in. So that's kind of the look I'm going for. We've got this, like, we see the path where they're going, and now we're going to follow them. So that's kind of how I would use it. Is like I just go back and forth a lot, and then just mess around with this with these kind of looks. One of the things that I'm also kind of using, maybe I should actually use it a little nicer. So I'm using hardware fog. It's got a certain amount of distance to it. Let me bring it in a little. Let me darken it again. It kind of adds to that, like the ambience of the scene. So, that's too much. I mean, actually, something like that's not too bad. Let's try 850. That's kind of neat. We get a little bit of a hint of the environment. Let's do 1200, just so we get a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. It's not too bad. But yeah, that's kind of like an easy way of like, how do we set up our camera? How do I start making a camera move? Generally, it's like, oh, okay, I need this to go up. I need to move it up a little. I have those offset controls, those like the dolly, the truck, the crane, like all of those, to kind of handle those kind of moves. So that's kind of the point. Is like when you do get to that, like we're making those minor adjustments there. So yeah, hopefully that helps.